Welcome along to Patrick Christie's tonight. Now, it's a slightly different start to the usual proceedings here because I am joined now by the Tory leadership candidate, Kemi Badenoch. Kemi, thank you very much for joining us this evening. It's great to have you on the show. So, look, many people have you down as the front runner. You performed very well in our head-to-head leadership debate, whatever it was. If there was a criticism of you, it might have been that you're a bit light on the policy detail. I can understand that. 4 and a bit years in opposition, time to crystallise your minds. But what I wanted to do tonight was to try to put to you some of the biggest news stories of the week so far. OK. So we can get a picture of, if you were in opposition, what would Kemi Badenoch be saying about this stuff? OK. Right? So, look, the biggest story of the week has been the Chris Kaba story, I think. This police officer is found not guilty of murder. Do you think that the police have to do more to prove that they are not institutionally racist? And was the BBC right to say that the verdict traumatised the black community?
So I do not believe in the use of this phrase, the black community. There are many different people who are black, who have different views, different experiences, different ancestry. The idea that we're all, in a club somewhere making decisions together, all think the same and believe the same thing, vote the same way, is nonsense. That's number one. Number two, the fact is that this is somebody who committed some very serious crimes. This belief that you can do things like that and you're still celebrated by others just because you share the colour of their skin is completely wrong. It is not right. This was somebody who was a serious criminal, and I think the worst thing is that a police officer had to go through so much just for doing what was right. OK, so you would actually back Yvette Cooper's decision now to give anonymity to police officers in future if they're... Yes, I would do. I would do. I think that the police today are doing a much harder job than they've ever had to do before. Endless people filming them on social, putting the videos on social media. You remember the incident in Manchester where it was clipped to look as if the police were the aggressors when actually they had been attacked first. We need to give them some space. Otherwise, no one is going to join the police. I believe in the police officers in this country. I believe in policing by consent. We do it very well. Let's not mix things up with the sorts of things that we've been seeing where people are celebrating a criminal and pretending that he was a victim without talking about all the people who were his victims. Just on that Manchester airport incident, I know that Reform UK has said they're going to look at bringing some kind of private prosecution if nothing goes ahead. Do you think that's right? Well, I don't know enough of the details to see why a private prosecution would be needed. I think that this is something that was pretty obvious and should go through the courts in the normal way. But let's see. Okay. One of the things I don't want us to do, you want to find out how I think. Yeah. I don't like us just jumping to things and, oh, this has happened, let's do this, let's do that. Quite often, the full details don't come out in time. The lies have gone around the world before the truth has got its boots on. So I like to wait and find out exactly what's going on before commenting. A lot of people want to dive in, but I'm a politician. I represent people. We've got to be more serious. And that's why I don't understand why you would go down that way instead of going through the courts process. Something that's happening literally right now, big news story. Keir Starmer is in Samoa and he's surrounded by people who are demanding that he pays reparations. So, should Britain ever pay reparations? And, crucially, is David Lammy's position as Foreign Secretary, given what he said in the past, bad for Britain? Yes. David Lammy's position as Foreign Secretary is bad for Britain because he is a student politician. You look at the decisions that they've been making around foreign policy, not just his statements on reparations, what happened with the Chagos Islands, just giving it away. These are people who believe in so much of this nonsense. Oh, decolonisation, anti-imperialism, a lot of very hard left views about circumstances of our past. If you put people like that in a serious position like Foreign Secretary, this is what you get. Many people kept saying, oh, there's no difference between Labour and the Conservatives. Now we can see what the difference is between Labour and the Conservatives. The idea that paying reparations, because some countries have demanded it, means that everything is going to be OK is for the birds. They will keep coming back for more and more. There's never an end to requests for things like reparations. Personally, I mean, you've heard what I said at the debate. I think these things are a scam. When you have certain countries who don't have any new ideas or policies of their own, it's very easy for them to get support in their country by going to fight, another country, in this case the UK, or demand something. It's a way of them being populist in their countries. We shouldn't fall for it. We need politicians who are not naive. And I'm afraid Labour are very naive, and they have no foreign policy plan, really. OK, all right. Well, so far, Keir Starmer's ruled it out, but we'll watch this space, I suppose. On illegal immigration. So
the news broke yesterday. The average cost now of housing each asylum seeker for a year is apparently £41,000. They are queuing up in Calais. Now, you say that you don't think we need to leave the ECHR to deport people. Is that true?
We should be deporting people more than we are now, even as we are in the ECHR. So what worries me is that we'll leave the ECHR, let's say we left it today, and I'm not against leaving the ECHR, but the problem still continues. And I don't know about you, Patrick, but I'm tired of politicians saying, we're going to do this thing, and then the thing doesn't happen. And that's what worries me, that even if we left the ECHR, I don't think it would solve the real problem, which is that people who are manning the borders, people in the Home Office, don't want to do this work. You see the messages they put on the message boards, the staff networks. They want to look after people. They want to help them. We need to make sure that those people work in charities, not in the Home Office, which has a very tough job to do.
Do you think the Home Office has become a kind of care home for charity workers, really?
I do think that there is a large number of people who want to do something else. They had a Director General, I think, who was there. I believe her name was Emma Haddad, correct me if I'm wrong. She left to go to Amnesty International. Right. That was one of the most senior people there, and I think that is an example of the mindset. Look,
just to pick you up on something you said previously about, I think you used the example of France, about how they're in the ECHR, they can deport people. I mean, I had a look on Eurostat earlier, though. I think the figures are a bit different from what you outlined before. I believe that you said something like they can deport about 70% of people. Well, according to these official...
They refuse and deport, not just deport. Refuse and deport.
OK.
Whereas we accept. That's a problem. So who is saying yes, yes, yes on the form? It's more than just the deportations. You have to refuse first. If you're just saying yes before anything else, then you're not...
But even though apparently their successful removal rate is about 7%, and since 2012... more than 1 million removals haven't been carried out. I mean, we had a recent case here. A man from Uganda clubbed someone to death in the back of an ambulance, and we can't deport him because of his mental health, according to ECHR. So how could you get rid of him without leaving the ECHR?
So this is an excellent question. 20 years ago, we were in the ECHR. That man would have been deported. What's changed? The ECHR is not the issue as much as the people who are reading the judgments in an expansive way. They are reading sentences and creating bigger and bigger scope within that. You're going to have to look at a lot of the legal activism. If you left the ECHR today, and I'm not saying we shouldn't leave, we can do if that's what's needed, there'd be another law that they would just be reading like that. We have a problem with culture and with people. The country is changing. It is becoming a lot more left-wing in its mindset in the people who do a lot of these jobs. We've got to tackle that too.
But you'd have to be, with respect, you'd have to also be tackling the mindset of a judge from San Marino there.
Well, not necessarily. It's not that it is our judges actually make many of these decisions before it even gets to the European Court. So it is our judges making the interpretations as well. And remember what I said, if we need to leave, we should do. But what about the Human Rights Act? That's our legislation. That also causes problems. Let's start with what we can do quickly. Many people think leaving the ECHR is like walking out that door. It's not. It will be worse than what it was like with Brexit. Northern Ireland will be impacted because of what the Republic does, Good Friday Agreement. It's not just as simple as ripping it up and throwing it away. It's going to need a plan. And what I've said is that I'm going to create a plan. I wrote an op-ed about this. You know, people say I don't have policies. We're going to sit down, we're going to get a star chamber, we'll get lawyers, and we will look at, if we're going to leave the ECHR, how can we do it? How could we do it quickly? But what I'm not going to do is promise that it will happen when I don't know if the judges and so on and all those sorts of issues will be fixed.
Presumably, if you feel like you can't get through to them, then you pull the trigger.
Yes, but it may not even be where we start. Leaving the ECHR is not radical enough. That's my point. It is not a silver bullet. It's not radical enough. And what I'm tired of is politicians just making promises. Oh, we'll do this and it'll be fine. People don't trust us anymore. So I want to win trust by showing what kind of person I am, what I believe in, and then let's work on the policies together. OK. I think you're in favour of a legal cap on migration, so not illegal. What number? So, for me, the number is going to depend on how we are judging who's coming into the country. Let's say we have 10,000 max, no more than 10,000 people net. If 100,000 great people leave and 110,000 bad people come in, you've still got your 10,000, but the country is in a worse place. So my point is that the number is not the thing. It's who is leaving, who is coming in. How do we make sure that we keep good people here and we keep bad people out? Then you can look at a number because it relates to, for instance, housing and public service delivery. But integration requires numbers coming in at a much smaller rate than what they have been now.
And, I mean, look, obviously, as you will be well aware, Robert Jenrick said he could go as low as 10,000.
Yeah, but we made that promise before. Why didn't we meet it? So what I want your viewers to ask is why. Why is the promise different this time? We made a promise of 10,000 when David Cameron was there. My answer is that the system is broken, that we're just talking now, we're pulling levers, we're trying to start a car that's not working, and we're telling people we're going somewhere.
You couldn't promise it wouldn't be 250,000.
Well, no, that's certainly too high. I think 750,000, which occurred before, was too high. I think 250,000 is too high. I look at, for instance, the number of homes we're able to build. We need to be able to house people. Let's look at housing numbers. Let's come up with a plan and then come up with a number. Watch out for the person who's pulling a number out of the air. Where's that number come from? Okay. Let's work it out.
All right. The most, bizarrely, I think one of the most prolific policymakers that we've seen so far in this Labour administration has been Ed Miliband, actually. Shut down a coal pit in Port Talbot. He's launched whatever GB Energy is. No new oil and gas. £22 billion for carbon capture in the North East. Would Kemi Badenoch drill for new oil and gas, and would you reopen that coal plant in Port Talbot?
Yes to the drilling for new oil and gas. We cannot be reliant on dangerous countries for all of our oil and gas. And a lot of what's happening is that we're closing down our plants, making electricity and energy more expensive here and enriching other countries. So oil and gas is are part of the transition. If you want to get to net zero, if you do, you can't do it without oil and gas anyway. So it's something that's important.
Are you bothered about net zero?
I don't like setting a target without a plan. If you look at when that law was put in place, I was one of only 2 people who stood up and said, what are we doing? Where's the plan? That's why I am able now to talk about things without having to make lots of policy promises. I have a record that I'm standing on. I didn't just wake up and decide I want to be leader. People know what I have done, what I've delivered. They know where I've made compromises, where I've chosen to be more pragmatic than exactly what I would want to do to get stuff through.
OK. The US election, there's another button that's been in the news. I mean, the Labour Party has been accused, mostly by Trump and Elon Musk, to be fair, of interfering there. Who do you want to win the US election?
Well, whoever's going to be best for the UK. And I don't know yet who that is going to be, but we're working through all the diplomatic channels. When I was trade minister, for example, it was all about getting those free trade agreements. Donald Trump, as president, was working on a free trade agreement with us. It was nearly done. When Joe Biden came in, it was cancelled. So I would imagine that Kamala Harris, being part of that same administration, would not want that. What I don't know is whether Donald Trump would actually restart it. So it's hard to tell. But I want to be able to work with whoever wins, and it's important that we keep good friends with our allies in the US.
OK. The riots that we saw over the summer, they kind of came back into prominence this weekend. The sad death of a man called Peter Lynch, who was behind bars, reportedly took his own life. Yesterday, GB News' political editor, Christopher Hope, revealed that Justice Minister Lord Ponsonby apparently said, well, he did say, that judges have, it's on the screen now actually, judges may have deliberately given extremely long sentences to people with no previous convictions to make an example of them. Do you think there should be an inquiry into some of the sentences given out to people involved in some of that disturbance, especially for non-violent offences?
I think that there does need to be a very serious look at sentencing. The legal establishment has a view on sentencing that I think is quite different from how ordinary people see it. I, for instance, don't like the fact that we say we give someone a sentence, but actually it's really half the sentence that's been given. There's also a difference between how quickly certain crimes are looked at. Some things in the magistrate courts dealt with very quickly, people pleading guilty, and more serious crimes take longer, things don't happen. You know, the Hugh Edwards issue, for example. There seems to be a huge disparity in sentencing. So I do think we need to take a long, hard look at that. I would want to start a policy commission into sentencing if I'm leader. I've said that I'm going to set up a whole series of policy reviews. Sentencing, the appearance of two-tier policing and equality under the law, I think, are not quite clear. And we need to get to the bottom of that. And that's one of the first things that I would be doing if I was leader.
So one of the first things you'd be doing is, amongst other things, really having a look at the appearance of two-tier policing.
So I always say that we need to start from principles. If you start with policy without principles, you tend to go wrong. What is the principle that we're fighting for? That you're innocent until you're proven guilty. that we all are treated equally under the law, and there's no special treatment just because you come from a particular group or people don't particularly like a crime that's been in the news. It's all got to be fair and equal. But I don't know that that is what is happening now. Between the Equality Act and, hate crime laws, hate speech, we are changing the understanding and definition of equality under the law. I think we need to look at all of this again in a proper review, and that's one thing that I can promise, that we will set up a policy review to look at that.
Last question. What do you do for fun?
I watch cartoons.
Do you?
Yes. I can't read anymore because it's WhatsApp, so I can only get information. I can't read fiction, and there's no time. I basically work an 18-hour day, so there's no time to really kick back. I barely see my children, despite what Chris says. I'm actually not seeing them very much at the moment. So what tends to happen is I'll get home, like tonight, I'll get home 11:30 midnight, and I'll put on Netflix. What can I watch for half an hour? And there'll be a cartoon like Blood of Zeus. It's got lots of gore and violence and, some fake history, and it's entertaining. And I can just watch that and zone out and not think about stuff during the day.
All right, sweet. Wasn't expecting
that.
I'm
not watching Peppa Pig. I'm watching the 15+ cartoons.
All right, OK. Well, fantastic. Well, look, thank you very much for coming on tonight. It's been a pleasure to have you. And obviously, it's a few days now, isn't it, until we find out. So.
It is. And, who knows what's going to happen. I think I'm doing well. Lots of people say I'm the front runner. I don't believe anything until the actual vote is cast. You saw what happened with polls in the election. But what I am reminding Tory members is that this is not a general election.
OK.
You're picking someone based on their character and their conviction.
All right.
And I hope that they pick me.
All right. OK, well, thank you very much for coming on. Great to have you on the show.